And we done did everything that we supposed to do, cause you my, whoa.
It's me, Roman LP, and today we're gonna talk about
AUTOTUNE.
So let's get ready to talk music. 1997, I believe, Antares AUTOTUNEs the world. Really, they just released a little convenient way to pitch correct small little discordant notes. Shares Believe takes it, ramps it all the way up, and you get the extreme robotic effect that people today apparently can't get enough of. Me included. T-Pain popularized it for me. Trap songs here, hip-hop songs there. I've even heard it in gospel. I've even heard it in country, which was a mind blower to me. But nowadays, most artists will use just a splash, a smidget, a little teensy teaspoon, or a bunch, small little pitch corrections here and there, or the extreme robotic effect. 90% of artists today are using AUTOTUNE or some type of pitch correction plugin. Now there's the automated AUTOTUNE plugins. You know, Antares has a few. There are some others, like in GarageBand, there might be an automatic pitch correction tool where you just control the amount used and how fast it starts to correct. There's one. Here's one. There's one. There's a lot. Slide that AUTOTUNE amount up. Well, that's all you gotta do. Turn the amount up, it'll work for itself. You wanna be aware of the key of the song. If you're in C, and you'll know this either by hearing or general music theory knowledge, alright, you can look at the key that your song is tuned in, or you can just hear the main prominent root note of whatever your instruments are doing at that time. You wanna make sure your AUTOTUNE key matches that key. Or else you're gonna be tuning to some nonsense major scale that does not match at all. Or some nonsense minor scale that does not match at all. Alright? That's really the only thing you got to do if you got an automated and you don't really want to put the work into fine tuning here and there. A lot of rap songs will use AUTOTUNE really just as a cool vocal effect, because it's not really like they're singing too much, except they're in those half and half hip hop R&B-ish songs, pain beats, A Boogie. There's a specific style that lends itself to that type of AUTOTUNE. What I really want to get into to talk about is the transition. Now the transition works with the amount. These are really the two main knobs of auto-tuning. The amount of correction as well as the speed at which it corrects, usually controlled with one knob, but it depends on the plugin. And then there's the transition, alright? The speed at which it changes notes in accordance to whatever melody line you are auto-tuning. Now if you look here, you've got some lines, you've got some waves. They're all scattered, but if you turn this pitch correction up, it'll slide each note to the closest pitch that it is on the keyboard. Now this plugin is new tone. It allows me to go in, change things, move things the way I want them manually, but it's still technically an AUTOTUNE plugin. If you look here, I can slide the note up and down and up and down. Not really to the left or the right. That's time aligning, and that's a different thing. We can talk about that too in another video, but it helps with all vocal processing, I promise. If you go up here, you're up an octave. If you drop down here, you've dropped down an octave. Same thing, but we're still correcting notes as we see fit. That's all. A little bit more manual, a little less automatic. Right here, we have the transition speed, okay? That means whenever I leave this note, do I want it to immediately jump to this note, or do I want it to slide gradually, more realistic-like, more human-like, as you would say? As the line starts to square out, it'll jump faster into the next note. Now let's talk about fine-tuning. When it comes to fine-tuning, you can control the beginning and the end, the way that they go into the next note, and the way they come from the previous one. This is for if you want a little bit more precise control over how the singer is coming from each note and going to the next one. This way you can control the amount of AUTOTUNE specifically, as well as keep that humanizing sound, because I promise, some plugins, the automatic humanizing, it's a little finicky. Sometimes it works, sometimes it sounds great, but a little manual control just keeps my heart at ease. As you zoom in, you can even chop them in half and move a piece of the note up. Do you see those little bubbles? Whenever an artist goes up like that on a little wavelength,
I like cheese.
that ease is a little bubble. Now if you break that off, you can push it up and auto-tune it even harder than it was before. If you hardline auto-tune, amount 100%, transition 100%, it's gonna skip right over that bubble because it doesn't fall on a note, okay? That's a stylistic expression. But if you wanna hear that, chop it out. Use your splice tool with the knife and move it up to that note. This is where a knowledge of those specific notes on the scale is gonna come in handy. Or your ear. You can honestly just move it up to whatever note tickles your fancy. The more you alter it from its original singing expression, the more artificial it's going to sound. And a good rule of thumb is to only move notes that look like they want to move already. This one right here, he wants to move already. The way that auto-tuning works is that it will take whatever note is sung and move it as perfect as it can and move it closer and closer to the center of that note on the keyboard scale, all right? You've got 12 notes until you get to the next note and a new octave. It's gonna move whatever note it's looking at as close as it can to that note, to the note that is closest in the vicinity, okay? Now the more you turn up, the more it's gonna move it as close as it can, correct it, and make it sound perfect. As you turn it down, it's going to let whatever happened happen a little bit more prevalent and a little bit more audible. The last thing I want to talk about is placement. Where do you put these auto-tune pieces in your mix? Where are you putting the auto-tune in the vocal takes that you have? If you put it on the main melody, cranked up to 100%, well then, I'd advise that you crank it up to 100% for every other take. Because if you're gonna have the most prominent melody that high, you might as well keep the other background ones perfect. Now, if you're looking for a distinct novelty-like sound where the backgrounds aren't really like that, but the main melody line is, or maybe just in a certain section of the song, that's understandable too. Sometimes Frank Ocean does it. Pretty sure Frank Ocean did that in Nights, was it? Or maybe Pyramids? I don't know. Look through the song, you'll hear what I'm talking about. Maybe it was even Novocaine, but I digress. If you're just looking for a little bit of pitch correction, you generally want the most realistic and human sounding take up front, and the rest that fall back get more and more auto-tune as you go down the vocal priority chain. Which vocal takes precedent over the others, alright? Main melody up front, then perhaps your harmony next, or your left and right panning if you want a wide stereo main melody line. Then you've got your ad-libs, then whatever else. Maybe your instruments. Usually, most instruments don't need auto-tune. But if you have some type of hand-recorded acoustic guitar or some specialty effect you want to put on the instrument just for a certain type of flair or color, be my guest. Just be aware that certain auto-tune plugins need to be adjusted for correcting instruments as opposed to vocals. Other auto-tune plugins don't work as well on instruments as they do on vocals. And there's no reason to really use the humanizing knob unless you want the instrument to sound more like how it did when you recorded it or its original state. That's what that knob really does. It doesn't just automatically make it sound like a person. It's more so it makes it sound like its original audio. I've auto-tuned guitars. I've auto-tuned guitars, mainly guitars, because guitars have the character of whenever you're playing them, you know, the strings might bend just slightly, and if I wanted to sit right on top of that pitch, right on top of that note, I'll throw a little bit of auto-tune on top. And Terrace does have a feature where it can switch between vocal and instrument. That's just so I don't have too many clashing notes in a song that I want to have just a slight pop feel. But I don't overuse it, especially if I have a lot of guitars, because typically more instruments with more harmony drowns out discordance. Another fun fact. Now if you just have all your instruments perfect and one out of place, it's gonna stick out like a sore thumb. But more realistic sounds tend to have natural sounding instruments as well. So don't go crazy with the auto-tune. Alright, this was a short little talk on singing robots. I hope you learned a thing or two or three. It's me, Roman LP, and I'll see you next time on Let's Talk Music.